less unpaid tickets. But it still comes down to New Hampshire, because New Hampshire has some really restrictive and privacy laws where I've got parking tickets in Washington DC and Boston, and they come right to me and I have to pay. But in most cases, we can't do that once anybody leaves the state of New Hampshire, because that's some of New Hampshire's privacy laws that prevent that.
Actually, there are some provisions that have been able to help us with that. One is that a lot of the parking enforcement departments in the state of New Hampshire use what they call the spots terminal. Spots terminal is actually through the police department. It's maintained by the state police. And what that terminal does is it has a lot of information in it that you actually have to be certified to use. Also, as part of the agreement with the state police, you are not able to utilize that information to be able to go and actually go after people with that information, to be able to make sure that they're paying. So now, what we do, we have now is a memorandum of understanding with the state of New Hampshire DMV. We actually purchase the information, and now we can utilize that information to be able to, if the city council down the road wants to look at other avenues as to how to collect that money, we are able to use that information. We also have another program that we use. It's called Cardinal, which our whole ticket base is based with this company. It's the software called Cardinal. And we're able to purchase information from them from any state in the United States, so that we could utilize that information.
Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, James Duffy, City Council, Ward 4. If I may through Mr. Chair to Mr. Lamoureux and perhaps Mr. Thornton. I want to compliment you on the report and the presentation. It's, I think, really helpful information for us so far. And I understand the rationale of increasing the rates on the short-term meters. Certainly that encourages turnover. Also, I think raising the price of the tickets, because I work downtown and I see many people, employees, it's the price of doing business. You keep plugging your meter all day, you get a $5 ticket. I've encountered out-of-town people. Actually, there's a few gentlemen during, not the most recent snowstorm, a couple back, there's been a few this year. Out-of-state had a box truck, wanted to unload into a business or some entity on Central Square, the other side of Central Square. The meter was malfunctioning because of the snowbanks. Put money in, it just kept blinking, it wasn't registering. I explained, well, I don't think if you leave a note, say it doesn't work, you try to put money on it, and he goes, well, I might get a ticket. I said, yeah, they're $5. He smiled, went back, told his buddy who was in the back of the truck. They just laughed. Didn't even put money, it went away. They got it, it was the price of $5. It was kind of a joke. Not an incentive to, turn over or, even put money in the meters. The question I have is, what's the rationale? I mean, I understand the Gilboa lot, there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done in our long-term lots, but what's the rationale for raising the rates in the long-term parking lots? There's a lot behind St. James Church, Gilboa Ave lot across the street. There are a lot of employees, I understand, who use those lots. They're not always making, high wages. If my calculations are correct, if they're working during the day when you are charged to put money in those lots, 8 hours, that could add up to about $100 an extra a month to pay to park downtown. That seems to be a lot of money. So I was wondering what the rationale was, and if that factor was part of the consideration that you made before you came up with this recommendation.
Sure. Based on a lot of the things that we've spoken to other parking divisions, the psychology of parking that we see, and if we read some of the books, and I know, Mr. Councilor Duffy, that you passed along some information regarding some of the readings that you've done. There's a psychology to the parking, and that is that in the premium spots that you have, you want to make sure that you have a rate that will be able to maintain the spaces that you have, and to be able to pay for the time that you're in those spaces and get your turnover. That's what the metered rates are in the downtown are for. And the psychology of it is that you have a lower rate in the lots. And that is that if you're gonna park long-term, if you're gonna park 3 or 4 hours where you can't park in the downtown, you'll be able to park in those lots at a lower rate. When we looked at what everybody else is doing in the state of New Hampshire, not only in the state of New Hampshire, really the East Coast, we wanted to compare not only the state, but we went to Connecticut, we went to Massachusetts. We've talked to some in Rhode Island, just to look at what their rates are and why they do what they do. The 75 cent, or the 20 minutes for 25 cents in the downtown area coincides with just about everybody on the East Coast. Some of the organizations, or some of the divisions, charge the same rate in the parking lots. And we felt that it should have a lower rate. And based on what we have for figures and what we need for funding to be able to maintain those lots, we felt that we needed to raise the rates also in the satellite lots to be able to make sure we had enough funding to do our projects in the future.
Yeah, there's plenty of deteriorating asphalt, and especially the Dearborn lot behind the church. But do you have an idea of how many people this will impact? Employees, because I understand there are a fair amount of people who use those lots during the day who don't work downtown, and there are people who live in the area who park there at night and then get their cars out of there early in the morning. But is there any sense on how many people would be impacted? Are there any other possible options? Because again, I want to get back to, that does seem to be a lot of money for someone who's, you know, possibly not making a lot of money. Is there, and I know the city is going through a process of developing a parking plan for Keene in the downtown neighborhoods for, you know, at the request of the council last year. Is there some way to help those folks? Because I think it's not an insignificant amount of people who depend on those lots, who work downtown. And I also know, you know, it's good that people park long-term, because lots of employees, well, maybe not lots, but where I work, at least half of the 15 people in my office utilize the meters, you know, more than 2 hours a day. They just plug it, it's easy to walk up instead of walking from where they have permanent parking behind Sid. So is that something that can be looked at? Because I think the rate, you know, if there is an alternative and still be able to raise the rates but make it affordable as possible for those folks, it sounds like that would be the most beneficial way to go.
Yeah, absolutely, we can always look at it and see what we can come up with, but I know when we originally looked at it, that was the funding that we were requiring to try to
yeah, there is
maintain the fund.
Yeah, I understand, there is a bottom line, and we do need to do something. Yes, I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, Council. Thank you. Through you to the parking director, I was wondering if you can figure what kind of budgetary number we're talking about by raising the time period from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Is that substantial, or is that just something that we're looking at for turnover?
Well, basically, as we go back to the beginning of the presentation, we are downtown to be able to make sure that we have the turnover for the downtown businesses, to make sure that they have customers to be able to come to their locations. We did complete a survey of the downtown businesses to find out when they were open, when they were closing. And right now, we're in the winter business hours, so some people are closing a little bit earlier than normal. But what we did find out is that in the morning, we currently operate between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock, 8 a.m. to 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday, or actually Monday through Saturday, excuse me. And what we are finding is that the majority of the downtown businesses have moved their opening times to a later time period because the downtown wasn't as busy. And as business owners do, they review what they're doing for revenue and expenses. So they've moved their times out. The other thing that's also happened is for those of us who've been around here for years, a lot of the stores used to stay open until 9 o'clock in the evening. The downtown, the geography of the downtown has changed a little bit, and so has the businesses. And that is that we have a lot of restaurants in the downtown area now, we have hotels, we have a lot of cultural type of activities with Moco and Colonial Theater. And what we're finding in the evening now is that more and more often, people are parking in places where they shouldn't be, which is in reserved spots, so somebody who has already reserved that and pays for it. They're parking in fire lanes, and the turnover is not occurring on the downtown area. Currently, right now, anybody can park in the downtown area at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because we close at 5. They could stay there for that 2 hours, but they can stay there the rest of the evening because there's no more enforcement. And the business owners are not having the turnover in their business areas to be able to have customers be able to visit. So a lot of the divisions that we've spoken to across the state, a lot of them went to 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and they've backed off till 7 o'clock. It better matches up to the time periods that their businesses are open in the downtown area to provide parking for them. So as much as right now we operate between 8 and 5, as you'll see in our recommendations, we're looking to go 9 to 7, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. That would allow the morning commute to have the opportunity to stop at one of the coffee shops or their restaurants or wherever business is open. When it's a light traffic area or light time of traffic, they'd be able to park there free. However, in the evening, when we actually need the compliance of making sure that all of the lanes are remaining open, making sure that they're parking in the proper locations, and making sure that there's some turnover for the businesses, that's why we're going to be recommended to go to 7 o'clock in the evening. So basically, we're going to be, we'll be losing 1 hour at the beginning and gaining 2 at the end, so in reality, we have 1 more hour of operations, just better suits and better coincides with the time period of the business owners of the downtown.
Okay, another question about, okay, this, as you mentioned before, this has nothing to do with the TIF, where that money is for investment in new infrastructure and such like that. So the extra revenue here is just for maintenance of current buildings and things like that, and won't, you know. I was just kind of wondering if you thought about, you could project it out when we do increase the parking and put in 1 or 2 other surface lots and maybe a parking garage or 2. Is that going to better position us to be able to afford the payback period of building something, like maybe a parking garage? Because I assume that these same rates will apply.
Sure, absolutely.
So the question, if I heard it correctly, Council Chairman, is that will this revenue increase better position the city relative to new facilities, new parking facilities? Is that correct, Council?
Yeah.
I don't think that is the motivation.
No, I didn't mean that. I would just.
I don't know that it would.
I didn't mean that. I was just saying that if we had these new regulations in place and that we were to bond something to build a parking garage, it obviously would have to have revenue to pay it back.
Right.
And these new rates would help us be able to afford, in other words, another place.
Well, these new rates, if they're applied to new facilities, for example, if new parking structures are constructed and the rates applied to those facilities, then yes, they will help to buy down debt. Existing parking right now, meters that the rates would be applied to would probably offset the cost of doing business, which would be the maintenance and other costs. But if we were to construct new parking decks, that would be a combination of tax increment financing as well as some additional meter revenue, which would be obviously enhanced by any increase. So yes, on that basis, yes.
Council Phil, just a couple of general comments, and I applaud our parking director for all the work that he's been putting into this. I know it's been time consuming. On one of the issues as far as altering the hours, that completely makes sense. I completely would agree with that. But just a general comment, I really want to tread cautiously here. I realize there's been a lot of comments made that Keene's parking is a bargain, and it probably is. Sometimes taxpayers need a bargain, sometimes they're hard to come by. But with that said, one of the issues that we're gonna be facing shortly, and then one of the things the businesses downtown will be facing shortly, is gonna be direct competition from the Colony Mill in the center of Keene, both walking distance from downtown and both with quite a bit of free parking. Obviously that the developer that has purchased these properties is obviously going to be going ahead, great guns, and putting a lot of money into these properties. He didn't buy these properties to lose money. He's going to be obviously competing. Obviously these stores downtown are going to be competing with existing businesses downtown Keene. I don't think there's any secret that they've already tried to recruit businesses from downtown to go into the center of Keene and the Colony Mill. And once again, we're going to be competing with free parking. So as far as increased rates and increased penalties, like I said, I'm not completely on board with that. I am going to tread cautiously on this. I'm not saying I'm completely against all of it. We do need revenues, so at least it's balanced. So we're taking in what we're expending. It might be maybe that we're expending too much, and we need to look at that particular issue. But once again, before we go ahead, I really want to tread cautiously, because this is one of those little things that really affect people and can really irritate people that shop downtown. And I really want to be careful that we don't push them to competing businesses.
Councilor.
As Councilor Powell has said about being an enterprise fund, and if we just go look at the chart that you put up here, if we do nothing, if we keep everything the same as it is right now, over the next 7 years, we lose we go $1.4 million in the hole. And I don't know the technicality, but if this goes $1.4 million in the hole,